Hello, everyone. My name is Tal Galon, and I'm the Managing Director and founder of Galon Consulting. As a leading boutique consultancy operating in Israel and Asia, Galon Consulting facilitates cross-border technology collaborations between the two regions since 2004. Thanks for tuning in to our new series of interviews, where we'll distill the most valuable, time-tested advice from top-notch CEOs about finding and working with strategic partners, entering Asian markets, and raising funding from local investors. Our guest today is TOMER FUCHS. First of all, TOMER is one of the nicest people I know. And secondly, he is an experienced biomed CEO and currently serves as Director for Corporate Business Development, Licensing and Acquisitions at the UK-based AMS Group. TOMER was also a client of mine for several years while he was a CEO of a medical device company named Silantis, who was later acquired by AMS. TOMER, I'm delighted to have you here with me today, and let's get to know you a little better. So tell us a bit about yourself, what you do today, and what kind of experience you had till today in the APAC markets.
So thank you very much, Tal, for inviting me to share my experience and insights from working with in APAC. And thank you also for working with me for many years in this region, part of our success. So in my background, I'm an industrial engineer. So my brain is wired as an engineer to some extent. And I've also later did an MBA, a Master in Business Administration in Heriot-Watt University from Scotland. I've been running in the industry for probably, I don't know, almost 30 years in different capacities and roles, management roles in different functions in organizations, including finance, operations, logistics, R&D, business development, sales and marketing. And then over the last probably 15 years, mostly CEO roles in larger companies and also in startups and small companies. So I think I should have quite a wide perspective.
And can you tell us a bit more about your experience specifically with Asia Pacific, with an emphasis probably on China, Japan, others?
Absolutely, yeah. So initially it was as the CEO of a medical device company, it was looking for investments and strategic partnerships for distribution. And in that capacity, I was able in 2015 to raise money from a Chinese highly reputed a venture fund that is part of the Tsinghua University.
Tsinghua University, to those of you who are not familiar, is the number one university in China.
And another investor that invested in that round, in our round A, was a venture capital from Singapore. So that was for me the first real exposure to APAC, really, in terms of business.
I would like to start with asking you, what's the biggest challenge you faced so far working with APAC, and how did you approach it?
I think it's. I wonder if it's the same challenge for. I'm trying to find a common dominator for for Asia Pacific. So I would say, I think that the first thing is really communication. It's not about the language. It's not understanding the words or the syntax of the sentence. It's and that's probably the language is a reflection of the culture.
Yeah.
And again, you will find within Asia Pacific probably differences between the different countries and cultures. So
Right.
it's very important to understand very basic things in the culture, not to make specifically in the very early steps, not to make traumatic errors that can kill the connection very early on, sometimes even without understanding that you are doing that. And then, unlike Europe and Western countries,
so how did you approach kind of, I don't know, did you do learning about the culture? What was your approach to kind of, you know, get across this kind of barriers that maybe some of them you don't even know before you start?
So a few things. The first thing, you know, I do what everyone does. I Google. So I Googled a bit about China culture, and I read some articles, and then I realized it's very different. Then Israel is the country of networking, and everybody knows people who have already done business in Asia Pacific. And I have family who lived for 8 years in Japan and now live for 15 years in Singapore. So I also had some calls with them. And then I approached a very good friend that worked with me in a previous work, and I asked her what's the best way to deal with in this region, specifically China at that point in time. And basically her advice was link up with Tal, who was working with that company, and really that was the time I approached you, and we started to work together.
Yeah.
And I think if I need to say a word about that, so I think it's very important to work with someone that has experience in this culture, knows the language, knows the do and don't. And as you recall, when we worked for quite a long time, it was I was sending you every email I was getting, and sending you before sending out every email I was about to send out to make sure that, you know, it's clear enough.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You know, before we started this series of interviews, we had a questionnaire asking people what they would like to learn about regarding technology collaboration between Israel and APAC. And most of them answered they would like to know how to locate the right partners. And some of them asked about the market entry strategies, and some asked about the least of the people asked about the culture kind of barriers, but actually all of those fields are very tightly connected, as you know very well from firsthand experience. So I would return now to a question or an example of a challenge you thought was worth mentioning with regards either China or Japan or other geographies in APAC?
Yeah, I forgive me, but I have a few, so I try to do it in short.
Sure.
I think the first thing is really the do and don't, and for that to understand the culture, you know, to bring a present when you go to the first visit or not, how to hand it over at the beginning of the meeting, at the end of the meeting, what kind of, you know, very small things can make a very big difference, and the other parties will appreciate you're very well prepared. So that's a small example.
Right.
Secondly, and that's specific, you know, for maybe for Israel, our culture is an impatient culture. I don't know if it's overall Western culture, but we like to see progress and results within a quarter, you know, if not within a shorter,
yesterday.
Exactly. And in Asia Pacific, and that I think that's a common dominator, there is a pace to the development of relationship and building the trust, and it's a long-term process, and you need to understand that, and that's very, very important, because the trust is really what drives all the business, and it starts with people and the relationship between people, and that's maybe the very basic thing you need to understand. To give you really real examples, so I remember going for my first visit to meet the Singaporean investors and sitting in a Chinese restaurant in Singapore with that round table of dishes, and really to have a good preparation, what are legitimate topics, what for such a first time, what is not legitimate. We Israelis, we tend to open up very, very quickly and start and say, you know, everything, how to behave with the food, you know, it's, there are some, where to sit, a lot of small things that when you come prepared, you first, your self-confidence is much better. You can, and that helps to build the trust, because when they feel that you are, you feel comfortable, it allows all the dynamic to be different.
Right.
Another example from Japan, maybe, and here I had good preparation from my family that lived for a long time in Japan. I came first time to visit a large Japanese corporate with the head of R&D of our company for 2 days of testing our product in their laboratories as part of potential collaboration. And we had the opening was half a day, basically, with a short presentation from their side, a short presentation from our side. And then we were supposed to go and start to do the work at the lab. And one of the very important tips I got from my family member just 2 days before going to Japan for the first time was about the Chinese culture and the concept of really stopping after hearing the other sides or the other counterpart for a minute or sometimes 2 minutes, just to reflect and think about what he was saying, and only then responding to that.
Right.
And if you're not aware of that, it can be extremely tense for you to sit in the room.
Also embarrassing, probably.
Sorry?
Also embarrassing, I would say.
Very embarrassing.
Yeah.
And the ability to understand that part in the culture, and also respect it a lot. I think it's a marvelous, it's a great, really a great culture of really listening to somebody and not replying immediately, just thinking about what he said and what he was trying to tell you, and how you want to organize your response. Israelis, again, if I may say, if there is more than 10 seconds of silence, we will immediately start and say something, you know, to fill the air with something.
I think you're generous. I think 10 seconds was generous.
So that was really very helpful for me to wait there and allow them the time to reflect before they responded.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So I would go to our last question for today. What are the top 3 tips you would give an Israeli or Western technology company when they're targeting the markets in APAC?
Yeah. So I hope you will forgive me. I probably have 4 or 5 very short bullet types. So,
even better, yeah.
The first one is patience. I've already touched that earlier. You need to be patient and allow things to develop in their own way. It's very helpful to use our culture in terms of doing some structuring and following up properly and not allowing things, just to slip for weeks and months and set clear expectation on timeline, but be patient. It's not necessarily at the pace that we are used to. The second thing is start with thinking about the people, about the development of relationship and building trust. Not immediately to ask the questions, to directly to seek your business objectives. Try to enjoy building the relationship with the other party, not just as a tool, but as a real friendship between people. Thirdly, I think is respect to the fact that it's a very different culture, and even see what you like about it and what you could adopt from it, and when you have that respect, be very free from prejudgment and things you already have in your Western thinking about different countries in APAC. And the last two, I think, are very, very important. One is naturally, from my experience, working with a very experienced consultant, hand by hand. I think that's a key for success. I don't think you can just do it, starting from scratch. It's very clear you would make big mistakes. And the last one is when you select your partner that you want, or partners or people you want to work with, whether they approached you or you want to seek them, you need to do a very thorough due diligence, because, and again, a consultant can help you, but it's not, in Western English-speaking countries, it's much easier for you to get a good feel from your senses and intuition whether the partner is trustworthy or not. In APAC, because of the language barrier and your ability to, to Google in Chinese or Korean or Japanese, and also to understand the different gestures, you need to use a network and a consultant to do a very good due diligence ahead of really entering a relationship.
Absolutely. Well, very good advice. Great tips for all those entrepreneurs already working in APAC or considering starting to work in APAC. Thank you very much for being with me today, TOMER. And thank you everyone at home for tuning in. We would really appreciate your feedback on this. Was this helpful for you? What else would you like to know about technology collaboration with APAC? And who else should we interview? Would you like us to update you when the next interview goes online? Please comment below or contact us directly using the provided link. See you next time on 15 Minute APAC.
Bye-bye.
Bye.